Well, hey, it's a Friday morning here in New Zealand, and I am beyond excited to be introducing my next guest for the Sexy Aging podcast. I have David Stewart from the Superager. Give it up! Woo! Thank you for coming on the show, David.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here.
So it's funny because if people said, oh, you're going to get to interview Beyonce or Oprah or David Stewart, I'd go, oh, David, hands down. Oh no, honestly, I'd lose my shit if I had to interview Oprah. I mean, that would be next level, right? I do want to shout out that Cameron Diaz, I'm coming for you. If you don't put it out there, you don't get it, right?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to let the audience know that David Stewart's podcast, the Superager or the Super Age, has been incredibly influential to my own personal journey to discover how to live the best life, the longest life, the healthiest life. And you've had some incredible speakers, guests and interviews on your podcast. I will go into the podcast a little bit later, but I'd like to just catch up with you, David, and find out a little bit more about you. I have 1,000 questions and only 45 minutes. So how about you start with where are you at? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Give us a little bit of the background.
Right now, where I'm at is in Marina del Rey, California, where I will be until Saturday. And then I'm driving back to our house in Park City, Utah. And I don't know how long I'll be there, probably a few weeks, and then I'll go somewhere else. What's the rest of the question?
Oh, okay. So
totally lost the plot.
You're American, so you were.
Yes, absolutely.
Where's your hometown? Is it Utah or?
That's sort of a hard thing to define. I grew up in a little farm town in Western New York near Canada. I lived in New York for a long time. I lived in Paris for a while. I lived in Los Angeles about 15 years. And with COVID, we left and we bought a place in Park City, Utah. So that's sort of where we've been for the last 2.5 years. But we move around a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually have visited Utah. I have good friends that are from Utah, and it is a stunning location in the world. It's got, all the beautiful seasons and everything that happens there, not unlike parts of New Zealand, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's beautiful. Have you been to New Zealand?
It's on my list. I want to go skiing in the South Island.
Come on now. We've got some of the world's Olympians residing in Wanaka, which is where you want to go skiing. Queenstown, it's absolutely stunning. We won't disappoint. And the borders are open. So come on.
Oh, right. Hey, yeah. I got to say, I'm a massive fan of your prime minister.
Yes, many people
She is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So jealous.
Yeah, she's done some pretty wonderful things, like politics. Some agree, some don't agree. I personally love her, and I think she represents women in leadership incredibly well. So we got something in common there. I have a question.
Yeah.
Moving on into the whole aging longevity.
Yeah.
Was there a tipping point in your life, or was there a significant event that happened that made you go, you know what, I want to do the best that I can for the rest of the life that I have?
Okay. So there's sort of a couple parts to that. I'm just sort of wired that way. So people have certain sort of central organizing principles in their lives. And my central organizing principle has always been my health. That's just how I've always been. But what I realized with the work that I was doing at Ageist is the main pivot, the difference between the way we are now and say 20 or 30 years ago is that we're healthier. But not only that, we expect to have a longer lifespan and health span. And because of that, everything changes. So like all your behaviors change if that's the way you believe. And so I thought, people talk a lot about career and purpose and romance and travel and all these things. And they're awesome and they're so important, but they really sit on top of, guess what? Your body. That's like the number one thing, the base of the pyramid: health, wellness, your body. So that's, especially with Superage, that's what we've been focusing on, is really showing people what's the best science there. A lot of the things we talk about aren't fully mainstream yet. I find, I don't know about you, but I've been working in one form of media or another for a very long time. And the essence of media is to get people to look at you, right? That's like the main thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at me.
Yep. Look at me. Look at me.
That's what we're selling. So if you say something outrageous, more people will look at you, and which leads to even, important publications like, the New York Times and people which I worked for a long time will, when in doubt, tend to say something that's maybe a little bit like, oh my God, eggs are going to kill you.
Yeah.
No, not really. But it serves its function of getting people to look. But what that does is it creates this environment of confusing, contradicting information, and which causes people to just paralyze. They do nothing. And so we try and sort of simplify that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I absolutely love the publication that you put out, which is called The Ageist. I subscribe to The Ageist, and I'll talk about that a bit more. And of course, the podcast, which I'm obsessed with. What's the biggest life change you've consciously made for the betterment of your health and wellness? Is it just one thing, or is there a couple of things? And I want to break that down a bit more, but what's the biggest life change you've made?
I had my spleen removed.
Whoa. Okay, good, not good, hot or not?
Not hot.
Not
Organ
hot.
removal, I do not recommend it, but when I was 49, I got this like wacko autoimmune blood disorder. I was in the hospital for the better part of a year as a science experiment, and they always told me, if you have your spleen out, there's like a 60% chance this will go away. And I was like, oh man, organ removal, not good. We're not going there. But after a while, the risk of the experimentation that was done on me was greater than the risk of organ removal. So I said, okay, remove my spleen. And since then I've been asymptomatic. So that's, in a long time. That's radical. Don't do that. People should not do that. Yeah.
I mean, you've just mentioned it, and next thing it's hot. Take out that. But I think one of the things we probably agree on is that we have a series of steps or non-negotiables that we put into our lives on a daily basis that I believe that add up over time, right? Yep. And the more you dive into this space, the more you learn, and you're able to discern what is real fiction, what is fact, coffee, alcohol, like all of those conversations. You are able to dive in and access the type of people that can give you the real deal on that information, and then implement it into your life on a daily basis. So what are your non-negotiables, David?
Sleep. Gotta sleep. Nothing works without sleep. You're not going to lose weight. You're not going to live longer. You're like, everything falls apart. So first thing, figure out how to sleep. If you're not sleeping, like I've got my sleep efficiency up. I sleep about 8. I wear a tracker, so I know it's around 8 hours, 8-10 a night. But my sleep efficiency is up to 96% because I work at it. I think it's just absolutely critical. The the other non-negotiable in my life is exercise. Like if you take exercise, like after 2 days, you don't want to be around me if I haven't really exercised. So now what I do is I'm working on you asked every day. I sort of like every day, every week, like modify what I do as I learn more. So right now I'm sort of all about increasing my mitochondrial efficiency and the capillary system in my body. And so something I've avoided for decades is zone 2 aerobic work, which is that really super boring. You don't get any endorphin high, just
low
sort
plod.
of plodding along.
But good for podcast listening.
Right. I've been doing that every morning, and then do my strength training in the afternoon. So sleep, exercise, and if you deprive me of good food, I turn into a toddler. I just fall to pieces. So those are the big 3.
Yeah, we have so many similarities, and we've covered very, very similar ground. So in the podcast Sexy Aging, we actually did dive into menopause and hormonal changes and shifts in women. And probably from my own personal experience, the very first thing I became obsessed with that I felt would make all the difference, hands down, weight loss, brain fog, joint recovery, was sleep. And so I recently released my first book. It's called My Menopause Memoir, and chapter 1 is on sleep. So it's like you can't start without that is your foundation. And
Mhm.
like you, I'm really obsessed with my sleep. I track, I study it, and I tweak it as necessary and plan ahead for the times that I think might not work out, like celebrations, right? Who doesn't want to celebrate the good times with their family? And you know that it's going to impact on your sleep. So you kind of just tweak that and prepare for that. And one of the other things you mentioned was, exercise and the changes that you've had to make. And also for menopausal women, there are significant changes you need to make in your fitness training. So I just think, finding out the science around what's really good for our bodies and what can we sustain, right? It's like, we know these habits are for life, but we want to be able to do it for life and not put something into our body or cause something that's going to stop us from doing those things that just naturally make us happy. Better sleep, movement, and quality food. Yeah, the foundations. Awesome. We're going to talk about food a little bit more soon, because
Sure.
I looked on one of your posts and you had this kick-ass smoothie recipe, and I want us to compare notes.
My smoothie.
I went through the recipe and I went, oh my gosh, we are the same person.
Are people really scared when they see you? Like, sometimes I have people who don't know me. They come over here and they see me make this thing and they're like, you eat that? And it's well, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a damn good reason for it. Actually, when you also mentioned mitochondria, yeah. I don't know, I haven't spoken to people about this. Sometimes things come out on the podcast that I'm like, should I say this? When I eat food, I visualize the impact of that nutrition on my mitochondria. Like it's called mindful eating, I guess, but because I understand the science of it and how it affects your body and how important it is to have lots of healthy mitochondria and long telomeres, I visualize how that food is feeling in my body, where it's going, and what the effect that it's having on my brain and muscles. And yeah. Is that a bit weird?
No, I love that. Yeah.
Okay. No, if someone out there's listening and going, oh my God, she's so off the rocker. But mindful eating, guys, highly recommend it. So I want to talk about your podcast. Sure. I've mentioned, I've been following since one. I've been one of those very first people that pushed subscribe. You have interviewed some super fabulous people: Stacey London, Kathy Smith, Cheryl.
I love
Ladd.
Kathy. Kathy's my buddy. Kathy is an athletic monster.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a secret about Kathy.
Please do. So lots of secrets. Bring it.
So we both work out in the same gym. And Kathy's daughter is an Olympian. And Kathy is now 70. And you see Kathy on her videos, and she's got this like little 2-pound like pink kettlebell saying like, okay, girls, that is not what Kathy does.
No.
Kathy's got
look
like
at her body.
Pounds.
Yeah.
She's like, Kathy is incredibly strong, and it's not from the 2-pound kettlebell, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, amazing. I follow Kathy, and she's just stunning, and she is the epitome. I mean, like 70. Are you freaking kidding me?
She's crushing it.
That is what I want to be like at 70, and I'm just going to keep following Kathy. So
yeah.
But I do believe you. I mean, she is obviously pitching to the mainstream, just keep people moving, right? Keep moving, don't stop moving. But and we know that, she lifts a bit heavier than that body. Okay, Cheryl Ladd, Carrie Otis Sutton, Joan McDonald from Training with Joan. How cool is
Joan.
she?
Oh yeah, Joan. Joan and her daughter. They're like single-handedly changing people's perception of what can happen to a 7-year-old body.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to speak a little bit more about that. So if you're not aware who Joan is, Training with Joan, if you find her on Instagram, she's also really Instagram savvy. So that's cool. That's great for the mind and creativity as a 70-year-old. But she literally physically changed her body from the age of, 60 through to 70 with weight
training. She started at 70. She was 205 pounds at 70, and she looked like a marshmallow. And she's now 75. She had her birthday 2 days ago. And Joan does dead hang pull-ups with a 25-pound weight. I'm pretty strong. That's hard for me to do. And Joan's 75-year-old woman. So hey, don't tell me it can't be done.
I'm so inspired. I'm actually a bit in shock because I'm processing that weight on my body. And I mean, I just want to do a chin up so I can, escape the zombie apocalypse or something like that. So, life skills. Okay, here's some of my, now I'm getting into the sexy geeky part.
All right, let's do it. What you got?
Dr. Vonda Wright. Orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
She is just so fun and just so engaging. I've listened to many, she's actually guested on so many podcasts. And so if you do have sort of joint pain or you're wondering how aging affects your joints, as you age, do check out Dr. Vonda Wright on the Superage. And then my all-time favorite, obsessed with Dr. Ken View.
Oh, Ken.
Dr.
Ken's
Ken,
my buddy.
Can you pass it on? Pass it on. Say I said hi.
Okay.
Love the episode on.
I spoke to Ken yesterday.
Oh my gosh. The longevity science episode, followed up by peptides, and the benefit of peptides, blew my mind. So I listened to the longevity science episode 6 times and made my husband listen to it too. And I said, this is life. This is how we're living. These tenets of wellness, and to just the fact that there are people out there who are literally sharing for free how you're going to live to 120. So it's incredible. Love those guests. And then you recently released a kick-ass episode, Hot or Not, with Tamsin Fidel.
I got tired of doing all the heavy science. It's like, come on, girlfriend, what's hot or not? Let's talk.
Yeah. So here's my question. Why a podcast? How did you get into it? Why did you think it would be a good idea? And what's your sort of underlying reason behind launching a podcast?
Well, I thought it was a terrible idea. Somebody came to me a couple of years ago. People have been asking me to do this for a long time. And I just was like, I don't have time to do this. Why would I do this? And it's just like, I'm really busy. And then somebody came to me and they're like, here, we're going to show you how to do this. It's not that hard. So the reason I started doing it was because I wanted to have a closer relationship to the people who read Ageist. And it's one thing to be able to write things and to sort of put that out in the world. It's like another thing when you become like a voice, and so people get to know you, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to let people know that, like, I'm kind of a fun guy.
You are a fun guy. I mean, I am often walking along doing my slow cardio.
Horrible zone 2.
Zone 2 cardio, listening to you, and I do find myself chuckling, when you pass someone and they're like, oh, what's she listening to?
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it works.
David Stewart. Top 3 interviews. Sorry about this question. Apologize in advance because it is like picking children, but top 3 interviews and why?
Oh gosh.
Put you on the spot here, I think.
Dr. Kelly, my dermatologist, because she's super fun. It was the first time she'd ever done a podcast, and I never do them in person. And I got her to come over.
Ketamine.
Good. And the ketamine was another one.
Oh, okay.
But Dr. Kelly's my dermatologist, and she came over, and this was right after the Linda Evangelista cool sculpting disaster. And so we talked a little bit about that, and that was really fun. Ketamine, the ketamine doctor, also super interesting, shaking the snow globe and redoing the pattern. Very interesting. I think they're all, when I do these things, they're not really scripted. It's just like, hey, let's chat. And you don't really know what the people who have something that the more experienced people who are oftentimes selling something are the more boring, because they basically got a script, right? They got a bunch of talking points they want to hit, and their PR person has put this in front of them and said, like, here, check off these 10 things. Okay.
Yeah. I ignore those.
It's the other
emails.
people I find super interesting.
Yeah. I ignore those emails. I get quite a few of them actually. So it's like, it's trolling through going, does anything jump out here? Have you got something, a message to share for the world? Well, everyone is going to get a benefit and not necessarily promote your product, right? Yeah.
I just try and make it like, if I have fun and I learn something, I figure somebody else out there is going to have fun and learn something. Like last week, we had a woman on who wrote a book called The Downstate about circadian rhythms and the value of rest. And when I first got the book, I was like, oh yeah, you should rest. That's probably like not a particularly novel idea. But then I read the book and it was really interesting. So, one of the things I learned, you might like this, there's a circadian rhythm to what kind of exercise you should do at what time of the day, which I never knew. So you want to do like sort of aerobic cardio activity early in the morning.
Yep, that's what I do. Yep.
And then do strength training in the afternoon. I told her I did this and she said, well, let me tell you why. Like that just sort of works for me. But there's like a reason why that works. So like, I just point this out in like, every time I talk to somebody, I learn some kind of like interesting thing like that. I think, oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Isn't it cool? So you're learning how to upgrade your life, and then you just sharing it out there, being altruistic in your message and just letting other people
just entirely selfish. There's just all these people are teaching me how to live better.
Yeah.
I have these world's foremost experts teaching David how to live better. So
I love it. And now I'm actually so it's called paying it forward, David. There you go.
Yes, exactly. Paying it forward.
Yeah. Who would you like to interview? Have you got a list of people that you're like, oh, hey, if they drop me an email today, I'd be on it. Yeah.
Dr. Lisa Mosconi.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, she's doing incredible things right now.
Very interesting. She's all about brain health, initially food in the brain, and now the protective effects of estrogen on the brain.
Yeah.
She's super interesting. I would love to speak with her. Who else? Rhonda Patrick, I find really interesting. She's, deals with human biology and the effect of different things on that. I think that's really interesting. I like people. I also like to hear, I've got a guy next week who did 11 seasons in the NFL.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And he went to Harvard and he did 11 seasons in the NFL. And he knows a thing or two about athletic recovery. So we're going to talk about that. So, yeah.
Brilliant. And then who knows, right? Someone else comes along and you're just like, whoa.
Who knows?
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I've mentioned it at the start of the podcast, but my ultimate person that I'd like to interview, and it's really interesting, actually, it's Cameron Diaz. And the reason why I'd love to interview Cameron, so if you know her, just say hi from me. But if I go back a little bit, I first got into the idea of living the longest life, the best life I could when I was about 45, and I was smacking up against perimenopause and I didn't even know it. I just felt like things needed to change. And so I was gifted her book, the longevity book. And actually I didn't read it for a while. And then sort of about 6 months after, it was still sitting on my bedside table, I thought, oh, I'll just start reading. I actually found it really interesting, but it was the catalyst to going further and beyond and finding out more deeper science. There were quite a few really cool things that she mentioned around the science of, healthy living. So it was the catalyst. And so I just thought, one day I'm going to catch up, glass of wine, me and Cameron, we're going to talk about this.
Sure. Give her a call. Who knows?
No, I already, slid into her DMs, but I'm pretty sure she has PR people that go, not you. Let's move on to the Ageist, your publication, digital publication. Absolutely brilliant in the approach around tapping into all things important across, I don't really feel like it's an aging magazine, but it is really appropriate, the topic. So you cover interviews of a super ager. I mean, those interviews are great reading, fashion, travel, products that are relevant to people, say, 45 plus, products that we would be interested in, and not just for the sake of promoting a product, like it's a legit, this will be good for you with a science background, and of course, finance. So you have a whole lot of different topics that I think are really relevant to us. Where to from here for the magazine? What's your ultimate goal with that?
Well, I'm not a particularly good strategic planner. I'll tell you my great strategic plan when I started it it was a very, very simple text-based newsletter that we sent to 50 of our friends. And my grand strategic plan was that they would remain our friends after we sent them this thing. So, you know, we're quite a bit bigger than that now. And, you know, we have a considerable amount of people that work on it now. You know, for me, it's, if I can continue to be helpful to people and inspiring to people, to show them to continue in an aspirational mode, which most things over about 40 are not.
Yeah.
They're like medicalized and infantilized and be scared and all that stuff. And we don't do that. And I think that continuing to do that, and the more and more people that I can reach with that message, and as you said, that whole 360 ecosystem around this time of life, I'll tell you, interestingly enough, you know, Tracy, like half of our audience is under 50, and like almost a quarter of them are under 30. And I asked them why, and they just say, "You guys are cool. We're going to learn to be like you." So
yeah, that's cool too, isn't it? That mindset shift. I also have come up against a lot of, I do sort of associate and hang out with quite a few younger people, and I'm really curious as to how they think. And I do feel like there is a real open-minded respect for the fact that we do have this wisdom and this experience, and we're not necessarily over the hill. They actually, maybe, dare I even say it, think we might be kind of cool. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the younger people that we work with at Ageist, I always learn from them. You know, the thing is, just don't talk down to people and say like, well, when I was your age, like if you say that, like, boom, like they just are going to black out whatever comes after that. And I think everybody has something to offer. There's a whole lot of stuff that I don't understand and I don't know about. And so you know, younger people help fill that in. And then, you know, there's a lot of things that I know that they don't know. So I help them. And that sort of up-down intergenerational interaction, I find like really interesting.
Yeah. Like the metaverse. Like they're going to help us with that. Yeah, and how are you with that right now? Because I am on the cusp of exploring a little bit more. So, yeah, how are you with that?
I don't have an Oculus yet,
Right.
so I haven't entered the metaverse. I read Snow Crash. When did that come out? That was like Neil Stephenson, like mid 90s.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to know what the metaverse is really going to be like, just go read Snow Crash. That's what it is essentially. I think it's a great thing. I think it's just another tool. It's going to be like the telephone, you know, or like the car. Like when the car came out, all the people with horses were pissed off.
Yeah.
The car was a better way to go. You know, does it mean you stop riding a bicycle or walking or doing these other things? No, it's just helps you go further, faster. That's okay. So I think the metaverse is like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually really like you, I feel like really open-minded to exploring, you know, how it can benefit our lives and our health, because I don't think it's going to, you know, push away the opportunity to stay healthy and fit. I think we will embrace it, and there'll be lots of ways that we can use it in our lives and through workouts and what have you. Okay, so getting down to something sort of a little bit more basic. You look amazing. You're what?
Are you flirting with me?
Me?
Just checking. Okay.
No, I think it's because if people are listening on the podcast, unless they go back to the YouTube channel and actually see that you are a glowing resemblance of health and wellness. It's true. So, okay, you put this kick-ass smoothie into your body like most days. Do you want to just break it down step by step? How do you build the Ageist smoothie?
Oh boy. All right. So it's been evolving. It continues to evolve. I've been eating some version of this for over 30 years. So the current version is a whole fistful of raw spinach.
Yep.
maybe half a dozen blueberries, not too many, so you keep the glycemic load down. Some ground flaxseed, more olive oil than you would think. Some cinnamon from Ceylon. Get the Ceylon cinnamon. That's the stuff that works. 5 grams of creatine, a couple scoops of collagen powder. And then the protein powder, I sort of alternate between either whey-based, like organic whey-based powder, or vegetable powder. And then along with, so then I like grind all that up. And then I have a bowl of steamed broccoli with some cauliflower and some steamed garlic. And that's sort of the side dish. And that's like what I eat for breakfast.
Yeah. Isn't it bizarre? Like, I never thought that as a kid that I would start eating vegetables, ground up vegetables for breakfast. But it's like, can't live without it. Day doesn't function without it. You just feel the mitochondria going, yes, feed me.
Yeah, more vegetables. Just eat eat more vegetables of all kinds. Yeah.
So you did try to be a vegan.
Oh, it's terrible. It's awful.
So segue, eat more vegetables, but don't be vegan. Okay, so what's your take on that?
No. It just, I need to be clear about this. It didn't work for me. And this is where I have a huge problem with all these sort of prescriptive diet books, like, Gundry,
so do
like don't eat lectins, or don't eat this, whatever. No. Like, the sort of food that works for you, you have your DNA, you have your epigenome, you have your microbiome on top of that. They have whatever your activity of the day is. You are a unique human being, and food is going to affect you. Different foods is going to affect you uniquely. And to say that, anything that's like average is ridiculous. That's saying like, well, the average human is 5'8". Well, you're too tall, or you're too short. Like, this is just dumb, right? Like, it's the future of all these things is really going to be personalized nutrition based on how these things affect the biomarkers in your body. So I probably track more than most people do. I had a continuous glucose monitor for a couple of weeks. I'm going to try something next week and use it again. So like with something like that only tracks one thing, but it's a really interesting thing. How does eating certain food at certain time of day affect your glucose level? So for me, things like one of my favorite junk foods is Amy's organic frozen pizza with mushrooms and olives, which I just love. I just love it.
Sounds amazing. It's Friday.
Oh, it's so good.
Now you put it in my mind, and I can't.
Oh, it's so good. But it just destroys my blood sugar. It just like goes through the roof. So I know, like, okay, like, you can't eat that. But I think that someone else, it might not do anything to.
Yeah.
It's highly unique how these things work. So for me, and me only, 2 weeks of veganism made me dumb, fat, and depressed. And I was just like a wreck. I couldn't think. I was just, and my wife came back from a trip and she sees me on the sofa and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I've been doing this diet." She's like, "Oh my God." And she like pulled out some frozen chicken fingers out of the freezer and gave me a couple. And then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, "Oh my God, I feel great. My brain works."
Yeah.
So it just didn't work for me. And I'm not saying for anyone else, it may be great.
Yeah. So where are you now? Like, what? Like, how would you term the way you eat? Because I don't subscribe to any diet. I've just, like you, I've tweaked things and I know what works for my body. And I'm aware of things like inflammation, particularly during this stage of life as a woman. Estrogen drops, inflammation goes out the roof. So tweaking your diet around the fact that you are highly inflamed is probably the best way you can deal with it. But, for you now, what's working for you?
Well, I think the inflammation is I'm really glad you brought that up. So inflammation is the root of
aging.
So many diseases of aging. And one of the huge ways to cause inflammation is to eat a high glycemic load diet. That is going to mess with everything, all of your organ systems, your brain, everything, in really bad ways. So there is one thing I know, and I can be universal about this. Do not eat a high glycemic load diet. That's just a bad thing.
Yeah.
So the worst possible thing you can do, get up in the morning and have a glass of apple juice or a glass of orange juice. That fructose is going to turn your blood into this pink foamy stuff, and it's going to bond to the inside of your arteries and the capillaries in your brain, and that is a bad thing. So don't do that. That's pretty much where right now, that's I try to eat as many vegetables as I can, and variety of vegetables. I aim for 15. Herbs count, because that's really good to keep the microbiome happy. Variety, and a certain amount of protein. The protein thing is, again, a little tricky, because as we age, we absorb it differently. But if you eat too much protein, all you're doing is you're just eating really expensive carbohydrate, because your body's just going to turn into glucose. So like that's, but I try and have some protein. My protein, I don't eat red-blooded animals. I don't eat red meat. That's just me. I'm big on wild fish. And I try and, like, my first 2 meals of the day tend to be vegan, and then I'll have like some kind of other protein at night.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of similar. So yeah, one of the really interesting things with women as we age is that we're encouraged to increase your protein amount. So I'm still diving into the science of that, because I understand how the body reacts with processing protein, and it's different times of the day. If you have too much protein, it elevates your temperature. So if you're having hot flashes at night, hey, that's not going to work out. So it's just certain things that I'm still really diving into the research of. How do you integrate realistic protein values into your diet on a daily basis, right? So yeah, it's very interesting conversations. I have another question for you. So
Sure.
We're podcasters, and obviously we tune into other people's podcasts. What's on your listen sheet at the moment? What are you listening to?
I don't listen to any podcasts.
No.
Zero. Yeah, I don't.
Is that because you're
time.
reading? You're spending time reading, or?
Yeah, I do a lot of time reading.
Okay.
I also spend very little time driving, which I think I've sort of organized my life. I find driving like just a tremendous waste of time. So I've organized my life so I don't drive very much. Once in a while, I love Rachel Roberts. I just think she's such a badass. But I find, like, the other ones, like, I'll look through, if somebody has someone interesting on, that's something I can learn from. I just, I read through the show notes. I can do it faster than listening. I know it sounds weird. Like, people are like, well, I don't, I'm a podcaster who doesn't listen to podcasts.
Yeah, well, I actually find that really surprising. So that was interesting. I will put that in the show notes.
Sorry.
Okay, so your books then, and you've been kind enough to recommend a couple of books through our conversation already. But what's if there was one book you were going to recommend to someone who's starting out on this journey of, like, I want to shift into a mindset that's going to be really good for me for the next 10, 20, 30 years. I'd like to live older than my dad, who died of a heart attack. I'd like to live older than my mum, who fell over at 70 and ended up having a hip problem, and it really took her downhill. So people are in our world is starting to think like this. So where's a place that they can start from if you had a book recommendation?
It's very guy based, but there's a book called Younger Next Year that was originally done, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s. They've updated it. That sort of lays it out in really simple, easily understood ways. Like, don't eat bad food, go to sleep. This is the kind of exercise you need to be doing. And what they say is you need to exercise hard 6 days a week. And we're only telling you 6 because 7's too scary for you, but you should really do 7.
Yeah. Move every day, right?
Move. Yeah. Just like, plan to exercise hard every day for the rest of your life. And things can get better. That's probably a pretty good one. There's, like, once you sort of get into the, Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, that'll scare you straight if you're not sleeping well. James Nestor's book on breath, I think, is excellent. And I think I would stay clear of the diet books.
Yeah.
Not such a great idea. But yeah, younger next year is really fun.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm going to look into it. I had not heard of that one. And you're such an inspiration to me, David. I, just love when a new podcast episode drops and I get that ping on my phone. Because I know it's going to be enjoyable. I'm going to learn something. And I get to implement a lot of what you do put out there. You're making a difference to my life. And I know, thousands of other people are really enjoying the content that you're putting out there. This is your purpose. It's awesome, and keep doing what you're doing. We absolutely love it. And thank you for coming on Sexy Aging.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.